Welcome to the workshop business meeting of the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Education. Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Yes, Troy Arthur,
I am present.
Jill Shudak,
Here.
David Kozier,
Present.
Patrick Peters,
Present.
Lauren Myers,
Here.
Jared Tripp,
Here.
Chris LaFurla.
Present. Now please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in the pledge.
To the flag of
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda has been approved. Next, we have approval of the minutes from the work session and workshop business meetings of July 25th, 2023. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the work session and workshop business meeting of July 25th, 2023, as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes have been approved. Next is public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board, and I understand we did not have anyone request time this evening, so we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. LaFurla. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Ostrowski to the podium. This evening, we have the pleasure and the honor to recognize some of our amazing students. So, Ms. Ostrowski, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening. Through our Student Star program sponsored by our Council Bluffs Schools Foundation, we are so pleased to shine a spotlight on students who achieve in and out of the classroom. And tonight, we're going to celebrate students who have achieved in spring sports. So help me welcome first our tennis state qualifier. He is Chris Wales, and he qualified in boys singles, Class 2A. And you'll be back for one more year? Yes. All right, good. Did you want a picture now? Or? Just one tennis player. Let's do this. I want to congratulate the coaches and parents who are here for all of the student athletes we're recognizing this evening. Yes. This is your second year, right? Second year you were at state. All right. For soccer, we have Liberty Bates, who is a 3A All-State Soccer second team here from Abraham Lincoln High School. Congratulations, Liberty. And she is accompanied by Coach Robbie Miller. Coach, you'll join us for the photo, I hope. And we also had another 3A All-Stater, Jasmine Rangel, but she has moved on to college. So.
Nice.
Thanks.
Good job.
Yes. And now for track. We had quite a presence at the state track and field meet. First, I'd like to recognize Aiden Perez, who qualified for state in boys discus. Aiden? Yeah, for track. You bet. Yeah, I think so. All right, next, Abby LaSalle, state qualifier. She placed 8th in the 400-meter hurdles. Abby? And this is your second year at state, right? Or third? Third. I shouldn't cut you short there. Okay, congratulations. Going for 4? Or did you graduate? Okay, sorry about that. All right. And then we have a 4x2 sprint medley team that includes Ava Watkins. Come on up, Ava. Haley Holcomb. Hudson Rao. And Aubrey Sambothy. And I wanted to note that on Aubrey's star, we have also recognized her. She also qualified in long jump. So two different events there. Congratulations. Thank you.
Or want me to?
Just want to say another congratulations to all of our students, and, I've mentioned this before, this is always something that all the school board members are very proud of, the fact that we take time out of the board meetings to recognize our accomplishments of our students and our employees, so congratulations again. You don't have to stick around for the rest of this if you don't want to.
All right, thank you, Mr. LaFurla. At this time, we'd like to do our informational presentations this evening. We're going to begin by inviting Dr. Matthews to the podium. Tonight, we're going to share with you about our 2023 summer learning programs, and I'm really proud to say that our district offers these programs, and we have the resources to do that. We have always been able to pull from different funds, but also our ESSER dollars, so we're very thankful for those. So, Dr. Matthews?
Good evening, thank you. As Dr. Murillo stated, we're very proud of all of the opportunities we continue to offer over the summer for learning and engagement and keeping students connected to schools. It is my pleasure to actually invite Lori Durand, our Director of Special Education, and Carly Gates, our Director of Teaching and Learning Supports, to the podium, and they will share more about our programming this summer, including a new offering we had, and give you a little glimpse into the learning that the students engaged in.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks so much for having us. It certainly was another wonderful summer. So this summer we were able to offer our traditional summer programs, and in addition, Thomas Jefferson offered a new opportunity for incoming freshmen. So to recap, our elementary summer Explore program was hosted at Longfellow Elementary. So in the morning, students participated in reading and math instruction, and in the afternoons they engaged in learning opportunities with our community partners. Our middle school program was again offered at the Henry Doorly Zoo, so the kids making the aquarium their classroom. It's an inquiry-based program where they work on projects, and then at the end they have a chance to showcase that to families, parents, community members, and they really are each year taking more and more ownership of that learning, and it's wonderful to be able to see them explain that and demonstrate that understanding. We were able to offer middle school math camp again this summer, which is a really great opportunity for both teachers and students. Middle school math teachers engaged in professional learning. They learned from our district math consultants. They really collaborated together and intentionally planned to set themselves up for success this school year. And at the same time, the students are able to brush up on their math skills, which will help them as they transition into the new year. We had credit recovery this summer, and 6 students graduated. 1 even graduated a year early. And then we also had our LIFT program, leveraging youth on the freshman team, for a freshman transition program that was at both AL and TJ. So that program is really, as we've mentioned before, centered around helping those students to transition to high school. They learn all about their new high school, what the importance of credits are. They take a trip to Iowa Western, they hear about the D+1 opportunities, and they really get to see how their high school career is going to impact that. And then finally, as I mentioned, Thomas Jefferson offered the SOAR program this year, SOAR into high school. And so this was just another option for the incoming freshmen. We know how critical those transition years are, so we want to provide as many opportunities as we can. This program was very similar to middle school math camp, so it was beneficial for both teachers and students. The TJ English Language Arts and math teachers were able to participate in professional learning with our district consultants. They planned together, they collaborated, they learned a lot of new strategies and techniques that they can use to start this year strong. And again, then those students were able to participate in learning around English Language Arts and math to be able to be successful as they start their 9th grade year. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori to talk a little bit about ESY.
Thank you and good evening. I'm talking a little bit about our extended school year program. That's our program for our students who receive special education services. Students qualify for these programs based on decisions of the IEP team, and we serve students preschool all the way up to 12 plus. Our experiences were the students typically work on their goals in reading, math, social skills, and work experiences. And they do that at the school during they come and they work with their teachers during the day, and then once a week they go on a outside event or into the community to practice those skills. We have a video that we've put together sort of capturing all the different moments, some pictures that we thought sometimes our students and our staff tell it best.
I was in Summer Explorer and we made a project about the pollator, and what the pollator does is it pulls trash from the land from the Great Pacific Patch. It brings the trash to the land, and then so there's not a lot of trash in the ocean anymore.
strategies that maybe these teachers hadn't tried before. And then that also gives me strategies that when I'm supporting teachers, I can say, this is something we've tried at SOAR, how would you like to try that in your classroom? It was really fun to watch that level of collaboration. Almost experimentation.
Thank you very, any questions for us?
Any questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, really impressed with the work that was done in the professional development this summer in the middle school and the high school math camps. That is really setting us on that trajectory to seeing our student achievement continue and our teachers feeling really comfortable in their curriculum and their resources. So I love that program, those two new programs. At this time, I'm going to invite Ms. Ostrowski to the podium. She's going to lead our discussion of our 2024 legislative priorities. Our board has received some information on this prior to the board meeting, and we wanted to come together and collectively have a conversation so that at the end of the evening, we could vote on those. We have a couple of organizations that are waiting on this information. IASB is waiting, UEN is waiting. It seems it gets earlier and earlier every year. We don't get time to get our feet under us, and they're asking for those. So, Ms. Ostrowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. Pleased to be here tonight to have a conversation, as Dr. Murillo said, about what are four main things that if we could have our wishes and have new legislation passed to benefit our children, families, and community, what would those be? So I thought, and I did provide some summary information from UEN, IASB, and others about what did occur this year. And there was some significant progress in some areas, and others there was no progress. So what we're going to discuss tonight is what were our priorities last year, what might we want to continue as priorities into the coming year, and what are some new things we may not have thought of before that we want to add to the conversation. Later on in the meeting, I'll bring a resolution, I'll update the sheet, and you'll have a resolution before you about our official priorities for the year, okay? So just to recap, last year's priorities, and I did put the handouts at your table, were timely, equitable, and adequate school funding. We bundle a lot in that, don't we? But last year we included preschool in this particular bundle. I think we were trying to fit it all in. The second priority was mental health services and student safety. There was great conversation last year about how do we, those really go hand in hand. Number 3 was teacher, administrator, and staff recruitment and the flexibility to maybe hire some we might not have been able to recruit in the past. And finally, retention of public dollars for public schools. So I would invite some conversation, if I could, around, those priorities, and I'll do that by bringing together a proposed priority list of 3 to start. And we have not yet accomplished timely, equitable, and adequate school funding. I think you would all agree. So I think some conversation around that. I think there was some progress on mental health services supports, but again, some more to go. And then Dr. Murillo would like to propose that full-day preschool funding be a standalone priority, especially in light of our wonderful new universal access to 4-year-old preschool, which is such a gem for our community, and we believe so strongly in it that we feel like the full-day funding would be most appropriate. And then number 4, what would that be? So, Mr. LaFerla, I would entertain some conversation, and I'd be glad to provide any insight I might have as well.
Sure. I have some thoughts, but I'd like to open it up for conversation.
I don't think anything really got hit last year that hard. I know we pushed through the 4 that you listed up there, 3 in there already. Oh, I'm sorry. I support having all 4 that we did last time, but I know we need to move forward a little bit. I understand that there's a couple things that did have
a little bit of movement on, but we didn't really see as much movement on any of the 4 that we picked last year. So I guess kind of going back through and maybe picking out, like you said, the full funding for preschool might be a higher priority than something else. So, I mean, what do
But
we?
with
No,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
With the legislation that went through, right, number 4 is gone.
Yeah.
That's already been moved, so that can't be a priority because of the legislation that was passed. And if I'm correct, there was some pretty good movement in the teacher administration, staff recruitment, things of that nature, waiving some restricting items. I can't think of everything.
Especially with the neighboring states, like
Yes, the
from
neighboring
you know, Nebraska
states
and
and-
Minnesota and Illinois,
Right.
requirements as far as teacher certification.
Mr. Milborn, we've talked a lot about the management fund and how we'd like to have some conversation with the state about that. Would you join us and share a little bit about our conversation for the board to consider? I think this could be another really good piece for school districts, and
Yeah, one of the things I wrote down was more flexibility with some of the categorical funding.
More local control.
Yeah.
The management fund right now can only be earmarked for one purpose, so either early retirement or for kind of signing incentives or that retention piece. And I've advocated, and Dr. Merrill has advocated that maybe we could open that up to use for both of those.
questions around that, do you see the importance of that, having that flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of number one, you know, I just wonder if, we've had some of these priorities for many years now, really, and haven't seen much movement. I just wonder if, you know, maybe it's time to change strategy a little bit, and I don't mean to derail the conversation and start all the way over with some of this, but maybe we'd see more progress if, instead of number one, the way it's written, we say, you know, increased flexibility in some of the categorical funding, and we get some specifics around which funds.
We can make management one of them.
Because they did talk a little bit about that last year, and maybe we can make a little bit more progress this year.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of unique things going on across the states, obviously about recruiting and incentives. And it'd be nice to throw our hat in that ring and be players with that management fund.
Have we seen what other, I mean, is UEN keyed on these same three?
Yeah.
I think being able to have some flexibility around how we can use some of the funding or being able to use it for multiple purposes versus either having to select is one that I really do believe that we can get some traction on. I think full-day preschool funding, I'd like to add a weighted system to that, as we did when we went after the ELL funding. And so it goes, you know, it would be weighted off of the socioeconomic status of our students entering into preschool. So maybe instead of a 0.5, we could have a 0.75. I went back and researched, when did we start paying for full-day kindergarten? Was it ever something that the state just, the legislator passed something? I can't find a date. It just automatically just kind of rolled into paying for full day. They never passed any type of bill. So I do think that if there's something we can do around the preschool funding and just begin to, you know, do a 0.25 and then maybe get to a full day, 1%. Any kind of movement towards that would really help us. We do a great job of braiding our funds and being able to come together around our grants and our state funding and our federal dollars and our and the additional grants that we've gotten that are certain for 1 or 2 classrooms. But it would be nice to see us begin that journey toward believing that preschool funding is really important to our state, especially as we're going after the early literacy, which is a priority for our governor. So I
Yeah,
think.
I agree that preschool funding should be one of the priorities, and it was a standalone priority, wasn't it? A few years. This was a while ago, but,
Yeah, we
you know, and I
can-
wonder if maybe, and I don't know if this would be, you know, a separate priority, but maybe we do look at, you know, asking for more weighted funding for ELL and poverty and special ed, yeah.
Yeah, I think if there's a place you could make movement on special ed dollars, it would be the place that would drastically
Yeah.
affect districts, right? Especially if you're going to be then moving more students into other charter schools, things like that, because they're not going to offer special ed.
No.
I mean, it'd be great to have that be
A priority.
a priority.
And what, I can hear Dean in my head. The reason that they never fund it at a greater is because we can ask for the spending authority as we need more. And so.
That just takes,
Right.
robs Peter to pay Paul.
But that, I think, is
We need
why
the
it's never
dollars.
been, because you can just ask for it, right? The spending authority. But we can, I mean, I'm certainly open to putting all of that together and pushing it in to see what happens.
Figure we spent probably $20 million in the last 10 years on special ed deficit.
I'm just surprised that UAN, that isn't a priority for the UAN.
Right. The special ed.
Special ed and ELL and high poverty.
A couple of notes on bills that died, just really pertinent to your conversation here, is one on poverty work group. They did propose in House File 477 that they develop this work group to talk just, I think, about what you're talking about with poverty and special categorical funds. Also, that House File 97 was a management fund for paying student teachers, which would help with recruitment, and also for being able to use that management fund for either recruiting or retention, as Gary mentioned. So there were active bills that just didn't get across the line last year that probably have some potential to resurface. And so if we could get behind and kind of focus in on some of those, I think there might be some good opportunity there.
Support there.
Well, I think preschool definitely needs to be fully funded. I mean, in 2004, that was the first year that preschool funding was brought before IASB as a priority. And it was this board that brought that to the attention of the rest of the school districts in Iowa. And I believe it was 2 or 3 years later that the legislature did pass funding for full-day preschool, but it was only at 60%, 6/10. The full-time FTE was just 6/10. So they've reduced it by 10% within the last 10 years, because it was at 0.6% when it was initially funded. But there was no waiting for students with IEPs or socioeconomics or anything of that nature. So personally, I believe that preschool requires so much more intensive strategies. To adults and to teachers in the classroom. We've got the higher expenses, so for that to be fully funded would make sense, that if we want to offer universal preschool, then it should be fully funded, along with any weighting that would be appropriate, greater than 0.5.
I'm hearing some support for that one, and what I'll ask is, do you think we should just do full-day preschool, or should we talk about it, and do you think you have a better chance if it really centered around the weighting for those of low income, as Dr. Murillo mentioned? That again is a House file that did have some legs, but was not passed.
And did that House file say just K-12, or did it have preschool?
It was just pre-K. That specific House File 297 was pre-K funding weighted for low income.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but considering, what happened with last year with our priority of retention of public dollars for public schools, I wouldn't be opposed to having 2 legislative priorities that are focused on funding. And one being full-day preschool and the other being more flexibility with categorical funds and more weighted funding for those special populations.
That's good.
I agree.
And I think mental health services and student safety, you know, we made some progress last year. I don't know if, you know, we want to edit that one, but it's still, you know, I'm sure all of us would agree that's still a major priority.
And our ESSER dollars are carrying us for one more year for all of our therapists and social workers, and really beginning to look at how do we move them back into our operating dollars if we don't receive funding. And student safety right now, we are doing a lot. I also see that with the work that John's doing in our buildings. We have a lot of grants and ESSER dollars that's coming through for that, too.
One other thing that I thought we might want to, and maybe this isn't a legislative priority, but something we are advocating for is reinstatement of the open enrollment deadline. Or an open
guidance.
enrollment deadline.
A open and don't, yeah.
Yeah, now that we've
Yes.
changed.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Oh, that's a good one. That could be
this
a
year,
separate-
I'm sure it's going to be a complete mess.
Yeah, I agree.
Is the Department of Ed pushing for anything on any priorities you've heard?
No.
Curious.
No, but Mr. LaFurla is correct on that door that swings open all the time, because parents and students not understanding that once I pick up and move, when I come back, if I didn't work out what was wrong here, but I took my student to a different district and it didn't work there, when I come back, I now must sit, if I'm in any kind of, you know, athletics or anything, for 90 days. Instead of staying and working through, if that door wasn't open, it allowed us time to come together, talk through any kind of issues that they may be feeling at one school district versus another. That really protects our students. That stability is critical for families.
Well, I think it's going to be even more complicated with students moving between public and private schools and creating educational savings accounts, spending money from those accounts, then leaving the private school, and, you know, how the state's going to manage all of that. They're having an open enrollment deadline, I think it would be good for everyone.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably a lot of cleanup that needs to occur because of the legislation the sweeping legislation that was passed. But I don't know how you feel, but it's going to take some time for people to realize the downsides, potentially, of some of those and work through the challenges like the open enrollment, lack of a deadline, and the money trail and all that. So if there's some key things that we could suggest that they could start thinking about and working on, then that might be pretty powerful as well.
Yeah, so if you had,
I guess, could we wrap it up? Of which, or kind of put a pin on what we're really looking at, because I've got a lot of different things, and if we're looking at 4, how do we meld those together to come up with this 4?
May I summarize what I've heard
Yep.
so far?
Yep.
Okay, one is support for full-day preschool funding, and, you know, we can either wrap some weighting in there or just leave it at that simple message. The other is flexibility with categorical funding, including the management fund, special education, EL, if we wanted to be specific on some of those, and also specific categories. And then finally, open enrollment deadline. We just have to word it.
I'm sorry to do this, but can I add something maybe to that open enrollment deadline? I wonder if there's also an opportunity for us to request some sort of reporting from private schools that receive public students. I mean, I think it's reasonable for us to ask
some
where our
boundaries.
students are.
So like a report.
Just some sort of reporting requirement for private schools to report back on where public school students are.
Okay. And I do want to say thank you to Mr. Schultz and Mr. Hamilton. They've worked closely with St. Albert's, and we're exchanging information, so I do appreciate that.
Well, I guess if it's not an issue, then we shouldn't make it a priority, but.
Chris, are you asking where they are physically located, or when you said it, I guess my mind went to.
Where they're enrolled.
Okay. When you said it, my mind went to, it's public dollars paying for the kids. I would like to see their test scores that the public dollars are paying for.
Yeah, I stopped short of going. Yeah. But
I won't.
at the very least, I think it's reasonable for public schools to know, particularly when, we may be, we're expecting, and we're budgeting for a school year, and we're expecting a kindergarten class to be a certain number based on historical records. It's helpful to know, no, you don't have 20 kindergarten students because they're enrolled in a private school.
Right.
We would have no other mechanism to know where those students are. But again, if it's not an issue,
I mean,
because we have a
if
good
we have
working
three,
relationship.
I'm with you for the fourth of, let's get reporting from the private schools. I mean, especially if it's public dollars that are paying for those children to go there. It's your choice to go there. I'm not saying it's not your choice, but if the funding is coming from public dollars, the public should have a right to know how those students are participating, how they're growing, are they developing properly, are they, and where they're physically located.
I guess I'm thinking more like in 2 weeks from now, when, Bobby stops coming to school and we just don't know where he is, it might be helpful if there was some sort of reporting requirement to know, okay, we can stop worrying about
Where he went.
this
Yeah.
child who's no longer coming to school.
Right.
Is reimbursement under, for those going to St. Albert's or homeschooling, is that going to flow the way I was looking at the disbursements where the mileage that I could bill for taking my student to, is it going to flow through the district the same way? Have they established that mechanism?
We've been given no guidance yet at all.
Right now, you go to the district that you're in to get reimbursement for your mileage of taking your student to another school that's non-public.
But I would assume everything, from my understanding, is going to be put into that account. Now, how the parent gets access to that account, we haven't been given the details. So will the private school be able to pull down the funds first? And then if they want to pull funds for mileage or for a computer or for other items they need to be successful, I don't know how they're going to have that ability, but my understanding is they will.
That was what my question was related to that, because I still have yet to see any clear guidelines as far as if, like a parent, gets the funds into their account, applies to a private school and is rejected and then comes to our school. Do those dollars come right to the district
will.
immediately?
It's kind of, I'm assuming, and what Dean and I had really dug into was it'll be similar to our kids open enrolling in. We bill back. So if
Okay.
that child leaves, let's say they stay at the private school for 30 days and it doesn't work well. When they come back, they keep 30 days, but we bill back
The rest of it.
and get reimbursed for the rest.
Okay. Yeah, it's been something I've been looking for clarity, and I have not seen that this entire time.
I guess we're worried about that. Districts, I feel, would be financially stable to handle that transfers. But possibly if it was a smaller school, like somebody established a small charter or something like that,
It'll be tough.
it would be tough.
It will, because usually you bill quarterly on the open enrollments, and that's how you draw down the dollars from the districts.
Maybe one of the priorities should be clear rules and guidance on how to interpret the laws they passed last
Can you
year.
pass a law?
That dust is going to try to settle this year, I think, naturally. So maybe it's a little soon to try to encourage change. I don't know, maybe it'll happen organically.
I mean, I think
I'm an
what-
optimist.
I think your point about clear reporting from the private schools and charter schools is, I mean, this fits exactly into that. I feel like that should definitely be a full
And I
priority.
agree, Mr. Peters, because we have, when a student open enrolls out, we send that information, but when they go to a private school, they go right there and they can request the records, but at kindergarten or whatever, we never know if they don't request records, and kindergarten wouldn't have those records.
Yeah.
But a school district receiving, because we both sign papers,
Mhm.
we know who's going in and out of our district to another public school. We have no record to a private.
It worked before.
Yes.
That process worked.
Yes.
So do you change number one then to flexible, equitable, and adequate school funding?
Yes.
And you get rid of timely, because I feel like they've gotten much better about that than they used to be.
And we could even
Then you
use the
could add
word
in the
categorical.
categorical stuff in there.
Yep, mm-hmm.
And then you pull the preschool stuff out of it, put that in full day. Mental health, and then what was the?
Was the open
Reporting.
enrollment.
Reporting,
Yeah.
open enrollment,
Open enrollment
but that also applies to kids in other schools.
And it doesn't
Well, I
cost
think,
anything,
We
right?
just have a right to know where our kids are.
So something like reestablishing the, excuse me.
I'm just saying, it's impossible to really budget for, a school year when students can leave any time for any reason.
So like the reestablishment of an open enrollment deadline. And the why would be to assist school districts in their budgetary and staffing and student services efforts.
Can we wrap them together? Reporting on our students to include a deadline for financial. I think if we could tie those two together, I don't know if we could.
I know I've been trying to wordsmith that in my head while we're talking, but
I guess the open enrollment's probably the bigger issue.
That would be a huge change.
it's like simple.
Yes.
Easy to fix.
Yes.
Right now, I don't know how it will work across the state, but I am very thankful that St. Albert's has been open to working with us. So if I could choose one, I would go for the deadline because that keeps us from having kids jumping back and forth. And we have kids that stay a day and then come back and don't understand what's happened to their eligibility.
So later in the meeting, you'll have a resolution, and I'm going to do my best to get these typed up and on your desk. I think Mark's going to be too fast, though. But we will figure it out, and we'll make sure you have a clean resolution that you feel comfortable taking some action on this evening. And then, as Dr. Murillo said, we'll share these with IASB and UEN, and they can carry those forwards to their delegations, and hopefully we're all in sync and can have some real activity and success in the coming legislative session.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And now for our last presentation of the evening. Tomorrow is our first day of school. Yay. Usually, we have our first day of school and then our board meeting at the end. This is our first year where it's come on the day after. Super excited about all the work that's happened. I want to, before John, stay for a minute. John Stile has taken on the responsibility of overseeing facilities for me with Dean leaving. And I couldn't be prouder of the work that he has done, really bringing Nick in and giving Nick some, and Diane, I'm buying you time here, and giving just an FYI, so don't get over there and start wandering. I see you're pulling paper and stuff. But no, I'm not, John, I'm serious. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership, for bringing in and working with facilities, and just really, when I knew Dean left and we were hiring a new CFO, and how large facilities were, John is a true Council Bluffs Community School District man. He loves our district. He's been here for a long time. He's helped us with Blink project. He's taken our technology to the next level. He is really taken hold of our safety and security and getting our badges and all the entry and being able, I'm running around at night, one night, looking at buildings to see how things were going, and I'm unlocking doors, and John's going behind me and locking doors, and because I hadn't figured out yet how to reset alarm, but I could take it off, but I appreciate all the work you've done, John. And I appreciate the work that Nick's done, too, under your leadership and embracing those changes. So thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
All right, so now, back to school, Eve. Let's call it that. I'll turn it over to Ms. Comine and Mr. Schultz to talk about our first day of school.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Schultz and I are super excited to share a video with you that highlights all of the amazing, great work that all of our schools and district departments I need to make sure that I don't use the word district, but district departments have engaged in this year to ensure that we have the best first day ever, but also the best school year ever. Our administrators, our teachers, and our staff have been committed, they've been focused, intentional, and they have engaged in a lot of work to make sure that not only the first day of school is the best day ever, but that we really truly are a continuous improvement school and school district to ensure that we continue to have that upward trajectory. And we really are excited that we have those administrators, teachers, and staff members with us because they truly exhibit every day what Council Bluffs stands for. This is a district where every student is excited to be a part of and go to school every day, where every parent and family wants to send their child to school, where every staff member wants to work, and it truly is a community that's proud of our district. And so Mr. Schultz is going to share a video highlighting some of the great work that they've engaged in.
You. And our goal is to get this song stuck in your head for a few days.
Nice.
Successful.
Right. I just messed up.
Mr. Hart.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of things that we do to prepare for the school year, and we are very excited for this year.
Thank you.
Nice.
And that concludes our reports this evening. And if anyone would like to get up at 5 a.m., we do have our new radio station that will be broadcasting live from Thomas Jefferson High School tomorrow from 5 to 7 or 5 to 8, I think. Because I'm on it.
I'm up.
There we go,
I'm up.
106.5.
106.5?
106.5. So listen in, you'll hear them interviewing different ones in the morning, and then everyone will be out visiting schools. My cabinet's all signed up, and just looking forward to a great day. And also for parents that may be watching, we are taking every precaution with the heat. We did send home some communication to our parents about that. And all of our schools have processes and procedures in place. The nutrition is sending extra water bottles for all of our students to have those. We're holding all students inside. Of course, we can't do recess, but even at the end of the day until the bus is there and we load the bus to leave. So a lot of precautions to get through the next couple of days. So thank you, Mr. LaFurla.
Dr. Merlo, before we move on, can I just take a moment after the back to school celebration this morning? I took a chance to go over to see Canesville Learning Center, and we did the tour a few weeks back while it was still under construction. It looks so nice. Every staff person in there was so happy and wanted to share thanks to the board for supporting the renovations and the project, and they just were really appreciative of us and being supportive of them in the building. And I highly encourage you guys, when you have a chance, to stop by and say hi. Yep.
Thank you. And I was going to do this a little bit later, but I do want to thank everybody everybody for all the work that they've done, all of you, and those who are not with us this evening for the work they've done to prepare for the school year. And just in general over the summer, I think a lot of people think that schools just shut down in the summer and everyone goes home and enjoys a long summer break. And some do get a summer break. I wouldn't say they all think it's very long. But, you know, we have buildings that are open and there's programs being operated in those buildings and custodial staff that are there to clean those buildings and do a deep clean in preparation for the school year, and food service who operates a summer food program, professional learning, and, you know, teachers that are teaching summer programs, and other staff members that are helping kids with those things, and administrators and principals who are preparing for the school year. It's a lot of work, and, you know, it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you to everyone for their
Chris,
work.
Having spent been in different schools during the summer, it is amazing to me how proud the facilities teams are of their schools, custodial teams of their schools. You know, when they, you know, redo the terrazzo tile and it just looks, you know, dynamite. I mean, they're just super proud of what they do. You know, because they want kids to enjoy coming back.
Right.
It's a really a wonderful feeling. So.
Yeah, schools really are at the center of the work. Okay, well, thanks, everyone. We will go ahead and move on to our resolutions. And first is the 2024 legislative priorities. Is there a brave board member that'd like to summarize what our priorities will be this year?
I move that the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors submit our 2024 Iowa legislative priorities as such. Number one, timely, equitable, and adequate funding with focus on categorical funds. 2, mental health services and student safety. 3, full-day preschool funding. And 4, the reestablishment of the open enrollment deadline.
Thank you, Mr. Kazire.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the legislative priorities?
Can I ask, just, could you read the very first one
Sure.
one more time?
Timely, equitable, and adequate funding with focus on categorical funding flexibility, I suppose.
That was exactly what I was going to bring up. Yeah. Okay. That was my only question.
Any other discussion? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes.
Ms. Shudak.
Yes.
Mr. Arthur.
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Tripp.
Yes.
And did I call Troy already?
Yeah, you
Oh,
did.
sorry. I apologize. And now Mr. LaFurla.
Yes. And the motion has been approved. Next, we have approval of a replacement of a warehouse second condenser. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I can move that the board approves the quote to replace the warehouse second condenser by Prairie Mechanical.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item?
And this was for the public, seeking to replace second condenser unit for the warehouse walk-in cooler freezer. System runs on a 2 condenser unit as a safety and backup system. We've had a condenser failure, and then a second condenser had failed after they'd replaced that one. So now we have another failed condenser. The bid on this was $27,865 by Prairie Mechanical.
Thanks, Troy. Any other discussion? Questions? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Shudak?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
And Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, and the motion has been approved. Next, we have a first reading of policies. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approves the first reading of the policies as presented, which includes 427, licensed employee professional development, 519, child abuse and dependent adult abuse reporting and investigation, 529, student disclosure of identity, 601, school calendar, 606, physical education expectation, 616, review and/or objection to instructional material, 619, school media centers, 627, student assessment plan.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Only question I had was what I asked Diane when we talked about these, about if there should be any state of Iowa information on student disclosure of identity, the new policy 529, does it reference Iowa code? Okay. Just not in there.
But
There's no-
a lot of times we have a
no-
code reference.
Yeah, because there isn't one.
No
Oh,
code
it's
reference
state code?
there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's got cross references, code references, and you had said maybe that's not, it's a reg, not a code?
Yeah, our practice in the district has not been to include the code references on the regulations, the point ones, twos, and threes, because they're more procedural, but, and typically they support a policy that has the code reference. But in using that model policy, we may have inadvertently left that code line on there, the legal reference line. So if it's to the board's preference, we could just remove that and stay with our current practice.
Any other questions? I have a question on that policy, on 529. Just make sure I understand this. We're going to require students who want to go by a nickname to submit a form for any nickname. So if my name is Allison and I want to go by Allie, I must submit a form.
Mr. Hamilton, will you join me? We had this conversation. Mr. Milborn had been reading on it, Mr. Hamilton had been reading on it, and we were all interpreting it a little different. And I know in your policy committee, probably Ms. Shudak, you guys were talking through how this would look. You didn't?
Well, I know that's what's happening in some school districts in Florida.
Yes, I know. So, Mr. Hamilton, will you kind of talk about where we landed and what we do in Power School?
Yeah, so currently, any name changes come through my office where they work with the families to make the name change. So we're essentially doing this work anyway. If you're going to officially change your name in Power School, the legal name stays, but your preferred name is changed. So that's really what we're looking at using this form, is changing the name in Power School and the email. Go ahead, Dr. Morello.
What Mr. LaFurla is asking about is, let's say I'm Victoria and I go by Vicky. And because I go by Vicky, do I have to have parent permission and a form filled out for me to be Vicky instead of Victoria?
Yeah, really the essence of the law was around transgender students. So if we're just shortening a name and using a nickname, we're not going to go through the fact of using the form.
It's only if they change the pronoun. It's only if they ask.
Correct.
Well, but
There-
the last
there's
sentence
so
of the
many-
second
It
says
does
it
say
also
nickname.
applies to nicknames.
Right.
So, all nicknames. So if they want to change it in Power School, it would,
Would be.
to go to Vicky, they
Yes.
have to change.
To change anything in Power School has to go through, and we would have to get permission. If you're just asking for Timothy to be changed to Tim, we're not going to change that in Power School and do the parent request.
And, sorry, Dave,
No,
but
finish.
just to confirm, we didn't review this because this is state code, and so it's not us interpreting something. This is taken directly from state code.
Correct. They said that if you're going to change names, you have to have received parent permission.
And so, for point of clarification, Tim's, because I know we had a lot of conversation about this. What you're saying is, as long as I leave Victoria in Power School, but my teachers all call me Vicky, we're fine?
We should be fine, yes.
Yes, and I wouldn't have to have my parents fill out a form?
Correct.
And who's making the determination on the gender assigned to a name?
Mr. Hamilton, it comes to his office.
Oh,
Everything comes through, and right now it does anyway.
Correct.
And I understand we're just trying to meet the law.
Yes.
That's
And, you know, it's all very silly. What guidance, if any, has the state provided in terms of if a staff member uses a nickname that hasn't been approved by a parent and hasn't gone through the proper channels? Is there any guidance on, you know, are there consequences for that staff
We
member that
haven't-
we need to worry about, or?
As of last week, I hadn't seen anything on it yet, any of the guidance,
Okay.
so.
That's why I wondered about the law, because I've looked up, I found several different versions online. I found one that was it was a pink piece of paper. It had all kinds of details on it. I cannot find that anymore. I find the ones that were like, where they've updated and changed sort of the existing 529, or no, 320, whatever it is. They've updated and changed it a little bit, but it doesn't meet this. But that pink one that I found out there, if I could find it again, it had nearly verbatim a lot of these words.
Yeah.
But it looked more like a in work or in process update to the law.
So if you've read some of Margaret's report, what she's pushed out on Fridays, the state had, the Department of Education had, and the 190 days from the time that this was passed to write the guidance and the guidelines. That would put that at the end of December, is how long they have. We have not seen, and so if you've noticed, you've probably read about some districts that have taken it upon themselves to create like lists of books and different things and trying to create their own way to make meaning of these new policies or these new codes, laws that have been passed. And we have taken the position to wait for the guidance. There's no reason to try to interpret this and make up our own understanding until we receive that guidance. And so that's, to me, that way I don't push out one thing and then I have to push out a second to our parents and our school community and cause confusion. We need to wait for their direction.
So
This,
is-
though,
is
we are required by law to get this
immediately,
passed
right?
right now, yes.
Okay,
why
so
we're-
that's why we don't have other
That's
stuff.
correct.
Okay. All right.
I guess I've got one hypothetical to follow up on Chris's. What if I'm decided to be some smart aleck kid in school and decide that, and my parent is okay with that I want my nickname to be Hey You, and that's all I want to be addressed as? I mean, will we be required to use that pronoun for that student? If the parent is okay with it, the student's okay with it? I mean, how far do we go with this, I guess? That's, I mean, what would be your response at this point in time? I want to be Hey You.
If I received that, my response would be to reach out directly with the parents and have some conversations about creating a distraction in the school environment and doing all those things.
My parent's okay with it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the correct answer is. If we would,
I don't
Dr.
know
Morell,
if there is a
I don't know
correct
what you-
answer, but
So,
I mean,
Mr. Kozar, what I would do is, once Tim got that and he talked to the parents and it didn't get any further, now my next call is legal advice. This is what the law says, this is what the parent's asking, what would you advise as our next steps? And we would follow what the interpretation is giving us, because right now, being in such a gray area, I mean, if they tell us we must allow that if the parent fills out the form, then we allow it. I'm not going to position the district to get into a lawsuit over something like that.
Sure.
It is. But the law is the law, and we will follow it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you,
you're
Mr.
listening
Henry.
out there,
Thank
go for it.
Hey, you.
I would do a different one, but that's all
Well,
right.
that's the best I could come up with in short time.
It's appropriate for a meeting.
And then the other changes were just to allow flexibility around the calendar that we've already discussed. And some updates on instructional materials. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Ms. Hudak?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes,
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion's been approved. Those will come back for a second reading and final approval at a later date. Next, we have a second reading of Policy 207. Is there a motion?
I'll move the board approve the second reading of Policy 207, Board of Directors Conflict of Interest as presented.
Thank you.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this policy? Okay, Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Ms. Shudak?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Not sure if I should abstain or if I should say yes, so I'll abstain.
Okay. And Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, and the motion has been approved. Finally, we have approval of Policy 512, the Code of Conduct.
I can move that the board approves the policy 512 code of conduct as presented and waive the second reading.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Again, this kind of falls into recent changes at the state level and state law and code of conduct that we have been asked to implement into our district.
And we wanted to get that done before the school year begins.
Yes, before it starts tomorrow.
I guess we could say for the public, we discussed this at length.
Yeah.
People have been sent this, all the parents have been sent this. The changes generally seem reasonable and prudent and provide flexibility, but with also putting in some guidelines that were desperately needed, I feel like, in our old policies. And provide us a working structure so Tim can do a phenomenal job working with his teams and through our MTSS and everything else.
It was a very comprehensive
Yeah.
Code of Conduct, and I'm sure it was a lot of work. So thank you to you, Tim, and your team for doing all of that. Any other conversation? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Trying to make sure I got the right one. There's a little something messed up here in the voting here. This talks about the condenser under the Code of Conduct. So I'm going to, Mr. Arthur? Okay,
Sure.
I'm going to write down who made the motion, I'm sorry.
Me.
And the second?
Me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Ms. Shudak?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the motion has been approved. Next is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes an MOU with the City of Council Bluffs and the Council Bluffs Police Department for school resource officers, approval of an MOU with Underwood for students attending Canesville, approval and agreement with Education Solutions Northwest, approval of the 23-24 evaluation and testing plan, the personnel agenda, and disbursements for July. Is there a motion?
I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation about any of the consent agenda items?
The only thing I would say is, go ahead.
I just had a question on the MOU for Underwood. On page 2, section 4, it says the parties agree that no first-year freshmen will be allowed to enroll. What is that about? I was just curious.
At Canesville, currently, even our high schools, we don't typically send first-year freshmen there. We really want them to use their opportunities within their own school buildings to, we have a lot of resources in our school buildings to use first, so we don't have a lot of freshmen that attend.
Thank you, that makes sense.
I was going to add, looked through the payments and process disbursements, all that. And just know there's, for the next month, there will be things that were from July that were actually 23, 24, that are in there that are not on this, but I do like this new format where I can search the disbursements on here, and then I can look at things. It makes it very nice to go through the warrants and things and then be looking at names and I can just find,
Yeah.
just search them. It's really handy.
Scanned
So
copies.
if that's what we're
yeah.
going to do going forward,
Good.
big fan.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Ms. Shudak?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, the consent agenda has been approved. Before we adjourn, I know Dr. Murillo has a couple of remarks, and I have a remark too.
Well, first I want to start by thanking Mr. LaFurla for doing our keynote today at our back-to-school celebration. We had a great time this morning at the MAC, and just everything went off so well, and the teachers just felt so honored, and our principals did a great job, and Ms. Ostrowski does a lot of work in organizing that and putting that together for us, so thank you for that, too.
Welcome.
I also want to, John, I should also say thank you to your technology team for allowing us to bother you and still you during the beginning of the school year. They've kept the boat afloat for us, and I really appreciate that. And lastly, I'd like to introduce to everyone, our new CFO is with us tonight, Carrie Gwynn, and welcome to Council Bluffs. She is hard at work going to school and learning Iowa finance, so good for you. Thank you, Mr. LaFurla.
Thank you. And I also wanted to make a remark about the back-to-school celebration. Such high energy in that room. You know, I know that summer ends too abruptly for a lot of people in our school buildings, but they were just all very excited to be there this morning. And, you know, I wanted to make a remark for those who weren't able to be there about, you know, as a board, being united in our support for kids and for all of our employees. And I'm really honored to serve on a board that is committed to doing our very best for kids. So I want to thank all of the board members as well for your commitment. And we're all wishing everyone a fantastic school year. Thank you. We're adjourned.